Let's continue to dig into all of this now with Joel Payne and Alex Vogel. Joel is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist, and Alex was the chief counsel of then Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist, and he is the CEO of the Vogel Group. Good Wednesday morning to you both, gentlemen. Alex, let's start with you because it's been a big few days of primary wins for President Trump. Overall, though, is this good for the Republican Party? Because there are questions as to what it may mean for moderate Republicans in the general midterm election.
A couple of things. Number one, look, it clearly demonstrates that President Trump is a powerful force in these primaries. His record certainly reflects that he's got the juice in that regard. It is of no real consequence as to whether Massey is ultimately the nominee. That's going to be a Republican seat no matter what. And frankly, I would argue that while the president certainly had a big impact there are a lot of people in Kentucky who didn't want to see Massey come back. And it really shows the weakness of if your entire agenda is talking about Epstein and being anti-Israel, you're not likely to do well in a Republican primary these days. And I think that was reflected in that. Texas, look, we still have another intervening election here. We'll see how that goes. But I'm not looking forward to spending any extra money in Texas. My view is Texas is, it's still a very red state, so I don't really have concerns about that. We've seen this before. It's been Lucy in the football for the Democrats for a while now.
Yeah, and for Joel, I want to know from you, when you consider that gas prices are high, the war in Iran is unpopular, the president has a record low approval rating, he is still demonstrating a chokehold over the MAGA Republican base. What does this mean for Democrats?
Well, Errol, dog bites man. I mean, an incumbent president gets the candidate of their choosing in a primary, particularly after they throw between them and aligned groups about $30 million towards it. That is not an accomplishment that I think any president should be bragging about. I think it would be more remarkable if Donald Trump didn't win. And the fact that Thomas Massey hung in there within 10 points, I do actually think says something about the competition of ideas that are starting to rise on the Republican side. But be that as it may, it's not news that Donald Trump got his way in a primary. I think what is interesting, and we're talking about Massey now, and I know we'll talk about John Cornyn in a bit. Bill Cassidy was in the news recently because he lost his primary. There's this whole class of zombie Republicans that are out of step with Donald Trump. And the question I would have for them is, what party are you actually vying to represent? The party that you represent doesn't exist anymore. I mean, Bill Cassidy, John Cornyn, Thomas Massey, and I really do appreciate Thomas Massey's courage on issues like accountability for Jeffrey Epstein and on issues of foreign policy, the courage that he showed there. But you are a person without a country politically. And I think that's what showed up here as well. You are not going to win enough independents and Democrats. And in some cases, because of how the primaries are set up, you can't. And you also obviously are alienating your base that is very loyal to Donald Trump. So you're really caught in a sandwich there. And I think what happened to Thomas Massey last night is a direct result of Thomas Massey not having a political base to go back to.
Well, let's take a look at what's happening in Texas. Alex, you had mentioned this. Yesterday, the president endorsed Ken Paxton in the Senate race in Texas. But incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn, who effectively is being snubbed, had this to say about it.
There's going to be a veritable tsunami of Democratic donor money from all over the country because this is the ultimate goal, to turn Texas blue. And unfortunately, I think if Paxton's a nominee, they have a better than even chance of doing that.
Alex, what do you make of that? And then Joel, I'll have you wrap it up.
Look, regardless of the candidate, it is always true that with a stable long-term incumbent like John Cornyn, I think that's a known, and that's therefore an easier path to keep the seat. Anytime you inject ambiguity into that new candidate, controversial candidate, slugfest primary to get there, it potentially is going to be harder to do. But you still have the overwhelming dynamic at play in the state and the popularity of the president in the state that's likely to help whoever the Republican nominee is.
Joel, does this help Democrats in Texas?
Sure, marginally it helps. I mean, I think I agree with Alex's broader point that Texas is still a state that Republicans have a built-in advantage. It certainly makes the state more winnable for someone like James Tallarico. The reality is, it might just be, even in a great year for Democrats, an R+1 and R+2 state, like it was when Beto O'Rourke challenged Ted Cruz, some 6 to 8 years ago, right? That just might be what Texas is, and it might not. The demographics of the state might not allow for Democrats to do it, but it certainly is easier, and it certainly is a bigger source of attention, and it will be a bigger source of resources now that Ken Paxton would be the apparent nominee if we follow form here, and if Donald Trump gets his way in this primary, just as he has in other primaries as well. And again, my point earlier, John Cornyn represents a party that does not exist anymore. There is no mainstream Republican Party that exists without Donald Trump. And despite the fact that John Cornyn is a 90+% ally of Donald Trump, that's not good enough, because he requests 110% fealty. And that is a thing that Republicans will have to deal with in very short order. But for right now, Donald Trump is the law.
We'll discuss this with you at length in the weeks ahead. We've got a bit of time before the midterms. Alex Vogel and Joel Payne, thanks for being with us.